The truth is, I've learned about it by making a lot of mistakes. And so often, even in the mistake, something profound has happened. And for me, that helps me. I really have a faith that is guiding me that's beyond what I could ever come up with. Thank God.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Sheila, on this episode of Guiding New Waters. We're excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
And thank you, Justin, for being here.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
All right, good. Well, today we want to talk about your career in psychotherapy, Sheila. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in deciding to even be a therapist?
Sure. It's a great story. I was fortunate to get into recovery as a 24-year-old. And shortly after that, I was in some group therapy as a client, and I was in sales at the time. And one of the group members suggested I go to on-site workshops, which is an amazing place. At the time, it was in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and it was an experiential workshop that was so profoundly healing for me that I came home and within 6 weeks got into grad school because I wanted to do what they were doing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now you are leading the Relationship Enhancement Center, which is I would say it's like a destination referral site. I mean, I know that people are traveling from all across the country, if not internationally, to Charlotte Airport and then staying in Matthews, North Carolina to work with your group. I mean, that's a tremendous point A to point B journey. Could you tell us how you went from graduate school and then to starting your own practice and starting the REC?
Thank you. Well, on-site workshops has been a huge part of that for me because the work combined with recovery is what has really opened the doors. And being able to try and apply recovery to all the things that I do, and including my work, has been so, it's made it clear. What they say in recovery is if you're not sure, pause. Now, it's not like I've done that perfectly, but I always knew because of my experience that I wanted to do experiential therapy and a lot of group therapy. And so in my 30s and in the years that I was raising a family, I had the distinct privilege of working at on-site every few weeks and months. And it's helped me meet people from all over the world. This experiential therapy is kind of a niche, and there's a fabulous group of people that are really drawn to working this way. And it has helped me expand conceptually a systems approach to working. Family systems is how I work with families. And so using that concept to drive how I'm trying to work with clients, employees, like trying to use the same principle. Each part of the system impacts the whole. And yeah, that has just been amazing to then grow in really just in the last few years into a group practice. And yeah.
So the experiential piece is so important for us to hear about.
Yeah.
And I hate to drop this huge philosophical question on you, but
Yes.
can you tell us what is experiential therapy?
Oy vey. So experiential therapy is an overarching umbrella to all the action-based therapies, and it's eclectic. The way I've been trained, it probably draws most heavily from psychodrama, but it also draws from EMDR. It draws from somatic experiencing, and it gives the experiential clinician many, many options to draw from. I can use all the different trainings and be able to create something that is action-based, knowing some of the fundamentals to how to do it effectively, how to do it safely, and how to do it honorably.
And what are some times where experiential therapy is just a great modality?
Well, I would say always. Because even when I try something experiential to where it doesn't go well or the client doesn't want to do it, it is so informing. It is so helpful to me as the clinician to see where an enactment might stop, because that can be so telling. Or if a client says no, maybe the most powerful thing that happens for their client in that session is my ability to honor their no. Yeah.
So, to make it a little bit more like tangible
Yes.
for the listeners out there,
Yeah.
can you tell us about a time where traditional modality gets you to a certain point,
Yeah.
but experiential helps you to move beyond?
I would love that. So we all have our intake questions, and we read through them before the client comes in. We have a little sense for what's going to happen. And I can begin with that narrative, so tell me why you're here. How can I support you today? We begin to hear. And it's making me think about this client that she had filled out all of her paperwork. Her mother had passed away while she was in her 20s. So I had in my mind this whole idea of what was going to happen. Because I'm the therapist.
You're the expert.
The expert, right. Wrong. And we could have gone the narrative route, and I could have guided and asked a lot of questions, but instead I took a basket full of scarves, and I asked her how she was feeling, and she said that she felt isolated, and so I asked her to pick a scarf to represent her isolation. She did. And then I asked her, where would you put this on you? And she took the whole scarf and put it over her head. And I got her permission and said, can I interview you? Could you role reverse and become isolation?
Interesting.
Wow. Like isolation itself.
Right. And she said, yes. And then I said, and let's just pretend her name is Susie. So she enrolled as Susie's isolation. And my first question to her was, so as Susie's isolation, when did you meet Susie?
Well,
And this is what was so shocking, because of course I thought it was going to be when my mom died. But she said, I met Susie in her crib.
well,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would have never gotten that if we had gone the narrative route
Yeah.
and tried to get something, which we eventually got there, about her mom. But she had such a lived experience of isolation that I would have missed.
Yeah.
this is like session 1.
Session 1.
That is so
First
powerful.
15 minutes of session 1, by the way. And then I'm thinking, well, this is because she's in her 20s and she doesn't have all that garbage running around in her brain.
Right.
But yeah, she was phenomenal to work with.
That's just mind-blowing to me. Because
Yeah.
I gotta say, like most traditional, in my experience with my peers in traditional therapy, like it would be an achievement to get to that depth of insight, maybe 6-12 months later.
Right. Right.
Absolutely.
Well, they don't all go like that.
Yeah, sure.
But it took my breath away. It supports me relying on the tools rather than what I think I know. Because the client will then share something that I had no idea was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I would imagine, and I don't know, right? Because I, as a clinician, have not done barely any experiential therapy. I've seen a lot of it, but as a practitioner, that's not my modality. Closest thing would be some Gestalt type stuff.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine, because I've always thought that, you know, just one of the limits, I guess, to just kind of traditional talk therapy, regardless of what modality you're using, is exactly that you're talking and you're limited to like the things that you are aware of or the insights that you can develop through, you know, cognition, right?
Yeah.
But I just imagine the experiential, the physical piece of it probably just brings a whole new element to the game, so to speak, right?
Absolutely. And it also accesses the other side of the brain, the part of the brain that does have all the feelings, and that is where the memory is. And it's so different. Like, you know, to hear the client who can narrate their story of abuse and rattle it off like they're rattling off their Chick-fil-A order.
Sure.
And then learning some techniques to help them tell their story in a different way, in some action that connects to that part to then heal that part, not the narrative part. There's no healing required there.
Right.
But the locked away part, the part that might drive them to ward off relationship, or the part of them that might encourage them to medicate. To unlock that part is what I think experiential therapy does so gently and profoundly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I feel like I should do some experiential therapy.
Yay. We would love that.
I would too, actually.
Yeah.
We should set that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a book came out a few years ago called The Extended Mind. I don't know if you've heard about this, but what you're talking about brings that to my mind.
Yeah.
So the extended mind, it's talking about breaking this illusion that the brain is a computer, right? The brain is not a computer. Like we're living beings who exist across time. And we have senses, and those senses influence our thoughts, and our thoughts influence our feelings, and our feelings influence our senses. Yeah. And So I'll say, having done experiential therapy and similar to your path is going to onsite and experiencing psychodrama. It took me to depths of insight that I didn't even imagine were possible. And I think a lot of it had to do with using my whole body, like picking up the scarves and all the fabrics, right? Some of them are satin, some of them are coarse.
Yep.
You have burlaps, you have silks, you have it all. And they smell a certain way, they feel a certain way. And it stirs so much memory.
Right.
And the depth and the engagement just goes to all the way, like very quickly. So it's a very powerful way of interacting with people. But I got to say, I felt so skeptical.
Yeah.
My biggest fear, like on the plane to, now it's just outside of Nashville in Cumberland Furnace. My biggest fear was I would just be so embarrassed
Right.
doing a psychodrama. Like, did people talk to you about this anticipatory embarrassment of psychodrama? Because it seems quite corny or quite, forced in some ways.
Yeah.
So how do people get over that?
I think having the permission to stop at any point is one way, that you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. And so often starting small and a small piece of work, like so that story that I shared about the woman with the scarf and isolation. I mean, the actual time that she had that scarf over her head, that might have lasted 5 to 10 minutes. And then the rest of the time, we didn't continue with the scarf over her head, but it was a snippet. It was a vignette. It was a little piece to then make it safer to do more. And then the introduction of course, she came into one of my groups.
Okay.
And it was so easy for her to trust me and to trust the process. And usually we don't start with a giant psychodrama. We start with joining. We start with creating safety in the group. We start with the sociometry, or the how is it that we know each other and how are we connected? And the reduction of anxiety and tension naturally increases our spontaneity and our ability to maybe do something that I didn't think I could do 30 minutes ago, because I feel safer. I don't even know the words to define why when I saw that 30 minutes ago, like, hell no. But now I'm doing it. Now I'm doing something that is new to me, and I'm curious about it, and I have permission to stop. And so that's what
so
I would
powerful.
say about that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, what I hear, what stirs in me when I hear you say those words, Sheila, is there's freedom in safety.
Yeah.
But a lot of people who are going into these treatment environments because they grew up in dangerous environments, like where you had to feel emotional pain and there's nothing you could do about it.
Yep.
So it's such a big leap to tell people you have the right to be safe.
Well, and I think all of that comes online pretty quickly when you go somewhere, whether it's a place like on-site, whether it's coming here to New Waters. When you're asked to let go of your medicating, and then when you have to give up that phone, very quickly we begin to reconnect relationally. We have to. we have to ask somebody to know where the bathroom is. We have to ask somebody, what are we doing next? What's the schedule? I don't have a phone. I don't know. I'm like this awkward human being who maybe 24 hours ago was stacked in all the work that I have to complete or medicating in some other way. And now all of a sudden I'm a lot more raw. I'm a lot more vulnerable, and I'm forced to connect, which I think makes it ideal for people to then consider trying new things. It's difficult to hide for more than 24 or 48 hours when you have nothing to hide behind.
Right.
And so being told that you can say no and that observation is participation, well, good, because in the beginning, I might just need to watch a few times and judge the hell out of everything, which is me, until I felt safe enough to not judge and to be accepted, to take a risk and not have everybody look at me like I had two heads, but in fact, nod their head and like I'm part of the group.
Yeah.
Healing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll say, in full disclosure, I actually am a student of Sheila's. I'm in the relationship experiential training process with Sheila at the RUC. And I would say, Sheila, one thing about you is when you talk about safety, my impression of you is you know what you're doing and you take it very seriously. And so that takes great skill, right? To convince people or to be a credible exponent of safety. Because I've certainly seen others who would say, like, you're safe, don't worry about it. And immediately you feel in danger. But all this is to say that I think every kind of therapist, especially early in their career, a question in the back of their mind is, how do I develop this skill to be this kind of therapist? And I think experiential, given that it's so nonlinear, it seems like a very daunting skill to develop. So I would love to hear a little bit about your history and your journey of going from this graduate student to a trainer.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hong, and thank you for the plug. I love that you're in the training group. That's really means a lot. So the truth is I've learned about it by making a lot of mistakes. And so often, even in the mistake, something profound has happened. And for me, that helps me. I really have a faith that is guiding me that's beyond what I could ever come up with. Thank God. Because I can't take the courage, nor can I take the blame.
Absolutely.
And trying to teach clinicians about that fine line in being less central in the room, but my job is to do everything in my power to keep it safe. And I think how I've learned the most about that is learning what feels safe for me and finding safety in my own body and in my own recovery first and foremost. And then experiencing when a client is brave enough to say that they don't feel safe or they feel as if I've run over them, and to not tell them they're wrong, which is what, of course, I want to do. You're just misunderstanding it. They're feeling what they're feeling, and to adopt even if everything in my body is saying defend, it's to try to be curious. Tell me where that happened, at what moment. I really hear and I believe how scared you are right now. I'm tracking with you right here and now.
Wow.
That is what I've seen and learned as to what helps somebody come back online or what helps to regain the safety. I've also had to own in a group when I've violated our own guidelines, when I've made it unsafe, when I haven't managed the time. That's a really good example of violating or making a group unsafe. And I know lots of therapists, and I've been one of them, who have thought that if I extend my session a few minutes, that my clients will like me more. But I've had a few of them get upset.
Right.
Because they were going somewhere or doing something, like as though I could pad the deck and get them to like, I don't know. It's such an example of where I can own when I have done something to make the group less safe, or I've gotten out of alignment to the guidelines.
Yeah.
And that seems to really help in the course correction. I think another way as a therapist that I've learned about that is when in my groups, one of the guidelines is, of course, you have the right to pass. And when I have heard somebody say they want to pass, but then I've gone after them, big mistake. And really, again, feeling so defensive about why I did it, when in fact I broke the guidelines.
Right.
And what I've learned is that when somebody wants to pass, it's really a test. It's not only a test for me, but it's also a test as to whether or not, because sometimes a group will encourage, nudge, put pressure, and am I going to keep it safe? That is another place, I think, that then makes a group, when they see the safety, feel the safety, they drop into more truth-telling.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting. And I love that concept. And I can, I'm just relating here because, I think as a greener version of myself as a therapist, there was those times where I really valued like we're going to push this person to be vulnerable, right? Like they don't know what's best for them. We're going to push them to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I remember exact situations where it's like, well, maybe we shouldn't have done that,
Right. That really blew up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they need,
But they need it, right? We know
Yeah.
best. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
But she was saying you have to have those moments.
Yeah. In order to grow, I think, right? And to know how to, provide a space where people can get the healing that they need in a more effective way, I think, right? We gotta fall down before we can run.
I was not expecting that answer, Sheila. When I asked you how did you get this skill, I thought you were going to say it was like these experts, these trainings, these books. But you're saying it's mistakes and faith or spirituality.
Love that.
But I would also say, I mean, as someone coming from the medical side where mistakes are not allowed, even though they happen all the time.
Right.
And let's talk about that another day.
Okay.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
To make a mistake. And there's immediately shame, right? Like if you're an intern, you're a resident in training at like a high expectations institution, they will ask you things like, what's wrong with you? Like, why did you make this mistake? And it's terrifying. And that terror inspires you or motivates you to do it better the next time you're there. But it's very fear-based.
Right.
But I think it's a huge impairment to our growth, right? That we can't face our mistakes and we can't reflect on them. We just have to avoid them. So, I mean, the wisdom that you bring to this is tremendous, but also it talks a lot about what you began with, which is doing that work for yourself, right? To fight through and be free of that shame, to not be encumbered by it.
Well, and to continue,
Yes.
like not done, continue. I continue because I believe in the parallel process, and I'm also an advocate of, yes, do lots of trainings and read lots of books. And I think it's that vulnerability and the ownership that is I can't expect others to be vulnerable and own stuff if I'm not also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this has been such a special time to hear and spend this conversation with you, Sheila. I hope you'll come back.
Absolutely. Thank you for
talk
having
more.
me, Dr. Hong. Thank you, Justin.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure
Thank you,
having
New
you.
Waters. Yeah. I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila.
Likewise.
And thank you for joining us on this episode of Guiding New Waters.